We'll call this morning's meeting to order. The first thing on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any discussion or additions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That will go right into employee recognition. So looks like we've got a room full of people just waiting for that. Okay, this morning, the first one we got is Jeff Lee with 15 years of work with the county and a couple other places I know, the Hawley School Board, I think, and a few others we could probably put on here too. So, well, congratulations, Jeff, and it says presented in grateful recognition of 15 years of outstanding and dedicated service to Clay County and its citizens. Jeff Lee, Law Enforcement. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
So thank you, 15 years. I remember the day you started. It was kind of a fun time. Jeff has held several different titles here with the Sheriff's Office. He started as a patrol deputy, and then he moved into Warrants and Transports. Worked that for a few years, and then he moved into SRO, where he's been ever since. He's worked Ulen Hawley school districts, went to DGF, and now he's back up in Ulen as well. He's also part of our SWAT team, where he's a hostage negotiator, and he's been doing that for several years, and he excels at that. One nice thing about Jeff is you can give Jeff any task, and you know it's going to get done. It's going to get done on time with very little direction or supervision, so it's really nice to have Jeff around, and we hope this 15-year plaque allows him to stay here a little bit longer, maybe another 40? He'll be here another 40 years. So we're happy to have Jeff. So thanks, Jeff, for all your work.
Thank you.
And the next one is our go-to man for the Highway Department. I don't know who's the boss. Is Ralph or is it Steve? What do you go by, Ralph or Steve? I think. Whatever. Okay. There's probably a couple other names too. That's Steve Halverson for 30 years of service. Steve, congratulations, and thank you so much for being with us for all of that time.
Thank you.
So I joked with Ralph this morning that by taking this plaque, he had to sign another 10-year contract. He just didn't know it yet. Ralph is an awesome employee. I mean, his district is always in great shape, and he's willing to help out wherever's needed. I mean, in this past year, he's helped me out tremendously. And even this winter, he helped the Sheriff's Department open a driveway after a full day of snow plowing. So I just wanted to say thanks, Ralph, and I look forward to the next 10 years.
Okay, we'll go on to citizens to be heard. Is there anybody out there who wants to speak before we get going on the meeting? Okay, we had one on the.
Mr. Chair, I had spoken with someone earlier today that intended to be here, but I'll keep the board up to date should the person want to bring their concern forward.
Okay. We'll hold off on that one then. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the approval of the payment of bills and vouchers.
I'll move.
Second.
Any further discussion on the bills? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, approval of the minutes from April the 18th.
I would move we approve them as written.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second for the approval of the minutes for April the 18th. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. With that, we go to the National Center for State Courts, Court Space Redesign Challenge Recognition. Judge Jade's gonna take care of that.
Good morning. I just informed Mr. Larson last week of this recognition, and he thought it would be a good idea just to share it with all of you. So probably about 5-6 months ago, even less, but after the completion of courtroom 6, the National Center for State Courts was recognizing projects that occurred in courthouses during COVID or in response to COVID, and recognizing There we go. And so I nominated Courtroom 6 for recognition with the National Center for State Courts. And last week we were notified that we were selected as one of the recipients of this recognition. So I'm not sure that Renelle Fenno, who is our court administrator, is thrilled that I did this, because what this means is that 2 individuals from Clay County Court Administration will be going on a 3-day trip to Indiana. And she's going to go, and she's going to bring one of her supervisors with her, but it's all expenses are paid through the National Center for State Courts. And I'll just read to you what this says. It says, "This letter is to inform you that your court has been selected as one of the outstanding submissions for the National Center for State Courts Court Space Redesign Challenge. As one of the selected courts, 2 members of your court are requested to participate in an in-person redesign challenge workshop. Workshop will be in June. It's hosted at the Indiana Office of Judicial Administration. The workshop will be, the agenda is going to be developed, but it will allow for a tour of the new Marion County Superior and Circuit Courthouse in Indianapolis, a new state-of-the-court facility which opened its doors in 2022. And so it will be a forum for participants to share their experiences, challenges, and solutions, and discuss opportunities for further innovative judicial space solutions. So I just wanted to advise you of this award and thank you for Courtroom 6. I think it's being put to good use, and I'm excited for court administration to have an opportunity to do this and then bring back further ideas to us for further projects. Any questions?
Does anybody want a trip in case you don't get 2 people?
We have 2 people, so
you
they're
got it,
going, but
Bus is full.
yes.
Well, we could always send Joe.
And I don't know why everyone is not excited to go to Indiana, but they're excited to go. So thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think a special recognition to Joe for getting that project done there. Thank you very much, Joe. Okay, request approval to reappoint county engineer. Justin?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. As you recall, this past June 21st, Justin was appointed to be our county engineer. State statute allows for the first appointment to be up to 1 year. State statute also requires any subsequent reappointments then are 4 years, and those appointments need to happen during the month of May. Over the last 10 months, Justin has been professional. He's been strategic in his planning. He's been collaborative, responsive, both internally and to our citizens and to this board, and he's been shown to be an effective communicator. And so my recommendation to this commission, should you accept it, would be to reappoint Justin for a 4-year term per statute 163.07 and place him on the grid at grade 27, step 4. With that, I'd yield for any questions.
Mr. Chair, as a member of the Highway Tracking Committee and working quite frequently with Justin, you know, I think it's clear, and we hear from township supervisors of how pleased they are with the efforts that Justin has done in his short time as highway engineer, and he's really proven himself. And it was just during the sheriff's report here a week or 2 ago about the good collaboration, you know, when we get into inclement weather and those types of things, and how well you work together. So it's, you know, I think from a highway tracking standpoint, thank you for all your good efforts, and this appointment of 4 years, you've earned it and deserve it. So, yeah.
I know when I first started there, one of the first things I wanted was that people at least respond to calls, telephone calls, respond to the people. You may not be able to help them out right away, but respond to the people. And Justin, you've always responded to me so quick and to the people. And thank you very much for your work that you've done the last year.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I might also echo all of the comments that have been said. My only frustration with this proposal, given that it needs to be made in May, is that we have to do it on May 2nd and not May 1st. You've just done a fantastic job in this capacity. You've really risen to the challenge and are so responsive to all of the needs that come towards you. And if you don't know the answer, you follow up as soon as you do. So thank you for the work that you continue to do. I also hope that we can fill the assistant position that is open. I know that you're doing double duty and you have a fantastic staff that helps with that. And I'm hopeful that we can fill that sooner rather than later. But thank you for the work that you've done over the last year. And with that, I'll make a motion to reappoint you for a 4-year term.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion, a second, to reappoint Justin to step 4 it is. And is there any further comment before we go on? Yes.
Just, this is a real good occasion because, as any boss knows, when somebody makes you look smart because they're in the position and you do the job the way you do it, I think you're making everybody on this commission look smart and make Steve look smart, and you've continued to fill the role. But I'll echo what Commissioner Mojo says. We really need to step up and get you an assistant because enthusiasm wanes after a couple of years when you're doing double duty, and we don't want to burn you out. So I think that's something, Steve, we really hopefully can do a deep dive on and come up with some candidates or a good candidate. If somebody is an engineer and they're looking to be mentored and given an opportunity to excel in the field, this is a great opportunity for them.
Okay. Okay, we've got a motion to approve next 4 years for Justin.
I should probably clarify in my motion that would be placement on the grid at a grade 27, step 4.
Yes. Okay. Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Very good. Congratulations, Justin.
Yeah,
Thank you for your
Justin.
great work.
I'd like to maybe appoint an assistant county engineer if we'd have Ralphie come on up here.
As long as he's going to be with us for another 10 years, he can probably do that.
That's funny.
Thanks, Ralph.
Thank you for appointing him. Much appreciate it.
Okay. Is that, excuse me, are you Ms. Hoffman?
No.
Oh, excuse me, no, oh, very good.
Nope.
Sorry.
Nope.
She's with the local.
Oh, that's Ann,
advisory.
sorry, yeah. Excuse me, different. Should have looked better. Okay, request to approve the switch correctional commissary vendors from Stellar to Turnkey. Ms. Johnson gonna take care of that one.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
So I am here on behalf of the correctional facility. Our contract is up with Stellar Services, which is the inmate commissary vendor that we currently have. We are looking to sign an agreement with Turnkey. This company offers several benefits to our facility. It has a local warehouse, ability to order commissary 2 times a week, which is very helpful for all of our new arrestees. The current system that we have, they're only allowed to order it once a week. They offer they offer vending machines in our housing units where the inmates can purchase daily purchases. And the cost to the inmate is cheaper as it does not get transported from out of state to our facility. This is at no cost to the county nor the budget. The revenue made from the commissary goes into the inmate welfare account, and I'm asking for the approval to have the sheriff sign the new agreement with Turnkey. Thank you very much.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is this the same company Cass County uses?
It actually is, yes.
I've heard good things, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? or
Mr. Chair.
recommendations?
Has Brian had an opportunity to review this contract?
No, I don't believe we looked at it. No,
You have not?
no, I haven't, and I don't think Mike has either.
Mr. Chair, I would move approval with review by a county attorney's office. That's kind of a standard thing that we usually do.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve it with the review of our county attorney. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
all right.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to request approval to fill a vacant full-time custodial position. Joe?
Morning, Mr. Chair, board members. Due to, we had a vacant position in the custodial department. This position is kind of covers half of the jail, 4 hours and half of the jail, or half of the FSC, so requesting to fill that position. It starts at a line 5, step 1. So,
Okay.
yep.
You have to advertise for this, or do you get someone,
We currently don't have anybody right now, so
Okay,
I
all right.
request to advertise for this.
there'll be no backfill or anything like that, or?
I guess I should request that in case we do have backfill. Usually that would be a variable hour that takes that, so.
Okay, very good.
Well, with that, the need is there. I'll make a motion that we approve filling the vacant custodial position with backfill.
Got a motion to fill the position, and a second? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I guess we gotta wait for a while for the next one, so
Thank you.
we'll just take on request for approval for out-of-state travel. Jim, you gonna take care of that one?
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm here today to request to travel out of state to Georgetown University if our application gets accepted. A little background on this. Excuse me. A little background on this. With the legislation that's been happening at the state level. I brought it last year about disciplinary room time and different rule changes. We have this opportunity with Georgetown. Basically, where the legislature's at right now is they have it where the Commissioner of Corrections is going to rewrite the rule. So the verbiage and everything around how operations happen. We've been in contact with the Commissioner of Corrections, and one avenue that we went was to get assistance at Georgetown University, so then we'll get a seat at the table when it comes to rewriting these rules, so we can assure that the verbiage is correct, that stuff can actually happen. I guess that's where we're at, is with the backing of this application that we have in. We're hoping that we get accepted, but we should. The Commissioner of Corrections has got their warden involved and their legislative advisor, and then all the people from MNJDA, so like myself and all the superintendents from other facilities around the state have a plan to go to Georgetown and work with these professionals in the field to come up with some verbiage and some language to ultimately rewrite the rules for the state of Minnesota.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Oh. Yeah, the West Central Regional Board, this was brought before them, and that board did approve it from a budgetary standpoint. And, we just let everybody know that any out-of-state travel by a county employee has to come before this board, so. But the 11 members unanimously supported James going to this and felt it would be very worthwhile, so.
Okay. Yes.
I think it's worth mentioning, even though I'll embarrass James, 2 years ago, he made us aware that some pending legislation would have been extremely detrimental to efficiently operating juvenile facilities in the state. It was not written with any input from the directors of those facilities, and it was well-intended, but would have undermined security of anybody working or housed in those facilities. 2 years later, because of the efforts of James and he's emerged within the JPA as being part of their leadership. Not only are we not having the adversarial relations we had with Department of Corrections staff 2 years ago, we actually have somebody who knows what he's doing, who's part of the solution. He's at the table. The MNJPA is at the table, and this is really a very, very positive thing for providing safe and effective facilities to house juveniles who are having a pretty rough time of it, where the objective is to turn them out ready to deal with the issues that got them put into facilities in the first place. And we do that. I think Georgetown is probably a place where those ideas will flourish, and I really encourage us to follow the lead of the board from our facility. And I thank James for the efforts he's put in there, and I'm happy he's got a chance to express his professionalism and his guidance on constructing what the Department of Corrections is going to do on this. And with that, I'll make a motion that we approve it.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
And Mr. Chair, this still has to be approved by the state of Minnesota first, right? Isn't that the process? You have to be accepted.
Accepted at Georgetown.
Yeah. And then I don't know who chooses who the 10 are. And so they're still, but we're supporting that you be one of the 10 that would go on behalf of Minnesota, right? Is that the, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, with that in mind, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Well, good luck on that, James. Okay, I think we still got time. Request to approve to replace the landfill GPS.
He's pretty busy today. It's probably good we get him in.
Understatement. Thank you for having me in this morning. Our GPS of the landfill that we use in our compactor for filling the cell has basically died and isn't working. We received 3 quotes for new ones, 2 for new ones, and they are above and beyond $30,000 each. We received a quote for a used or refurbished one that has the same warranty as a used one. I can get that installed and up and running for $19,270.75. We would not replace the monitor with that one. The monitor we have is still working. So my recommendation would be that we purchase the new unit, use the old monitor, and as long as we can to save some money. So I would request approval for the GPS of $19,270.75. With that, I'll yield to questions.
Mr. Chair? Yes. I just want to correct one thing. He said he had the same warranty as a used one, and I think he meant the same warranty as a new one.
Excuse me.
Just to clarify that. And then also, he did bring this before SWAC, and SWAC did give unanimous support for moving forward with what Corey brings today as a recommendation.
Not that has anything to do with the approval or anything like that. How long do these things last? When's the last?
Hoping you wouldn't ask that question. The lifespan is 4 to 6 years.
Oh, okay. Very good. All right.
Mr. Chair, I'd move approval of the request.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve the request to buy the used one at $19,270.75. If any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't know if we got time to do the adult,
That takes a little time.
that may take a little bit more time than we got. We just got 6 minutes. I don't know if you need more time than that, but,
Maybe take a
pardon?
break. Maybe take a
We'll take a
break
short
until-
break for 6 minutes.
Was that a motion?
Yeah.
I'll second it.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. With that, Matt, take her over.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. So we have a petition for a text amendment to the Clay County Development Code from Liaison to here and to Salman. The applicant is petitioning to amend the text of the Clay County Development Code to allow for a use auto truck, trailer, garden, and farm equipment sales within the Agricultural Service Center District. And this would be a change to our use table, Table 5-1, and to add a definition to Use Chapter 8, as well as some standards to Chapter 6. So the Planning Commission heard this in the meeting in April, and they made the unanimous recommendation to approve that text amendment. So the request came about because the petitioner would like to open a small auto sales and repair business on Truck Highway 9 in County 10 in Downer. And Downer is basically all zoned agricultural service center. There's some highway commercial as well. So that petitioner contends that there are similar types of businesses, an example being a motor fuel station, that are permitted in the Agricultural Service Center District. This is from our comprehensive plan. It's just going to give you a background on what the Agricultural Service Center zoning district is. It's mainly comprised of our small unincorporated communities throughout the county, and the purpose of the district is to support rural, residential, commercial, industrial, and agricultural industry to supplement the agricultural economy of the county. And in our new comprehensive plan, we have goals and objectives for commercial and industrial, and one goal being to encourage commercial and industrial development that is in harmony with the agricultural and rural character of Clay County, and that'd be promoting value-added agricultural, commercial, and industrial development in agricultural service center areas and along transportation corridors and hubs, and avoiding or mitigating against commercial and industrial development in or near environmentally sensitive areas, and avoiding or mitigating against commercial and industrial development that increases the potential for land use conflicts with rural, residential, or agricultural uses. And so these are our agricultural service center districts. So essentially those unincorporated communities in Clay County are Downer, Rolog, Baker, Rusted, and Cragness and Averill. So some considerations for you with this request. So we currently have similar uses that are permitted as conditional uses in the Agricultural Service Center District, such as a motor fuel station, a motel or motor hotel, building material sales yard, and temporary tire and or waste collection and or recycling operations. One thing is we have this use auto, truck, trailer, garden, farm equipment sales. It's in our land use table or use table, but there is no definition for this type of use in our code, and there aren't any standards as well for this. And so in considering adding this, it was also an opportunity to take a look at a definition, and then as well as adding some standards as well. And this would apply to areas in the county where this is currently a permitted use. The standards. So one potential definition, what my staff did is we looked at some definitions of this type of similar type of use from nearby communities in the FM area and other counties in Minnesota as well. And one potential definition that we came up for this use was an open area on other than a street used for display, sale, or rental of new or used motor vehicles, truck, garden, and farm equipment, or trailers in operable condition and an enclosed area where limited repair and service work is done, but not to include major repair work such as motor replacement, body work, straightening of body parts, painting, welding, storage of automobiles not in operating condition, outdoor storage of vehicles, or other work involving noise, glare, fumes, smoke, or other nuisance characteristics. The Planning Commission did make a recommendation to tweak this just to strike that major repair work such as motor replacement, body work, straightening of auto body parts, painting and welding. From that, and their reasoning being that if that work was to take place, it'd be happening indoors or in an enclosed area. So so that's basically the Planning Commission's recommended change to that definition. And then also propose some standards to go along with this use. So setbacks, vehicles on display must be a minimum of 5 feet from the edge of the road right away, must not obstruct the views of the traveling public. No more than 10 vehicles may be on displays for sale, and I'll get back to this one here in a second because there was some discussion at the Planning Commission meeting at what constitutes a vehicle. I mean, is it a riding lawnmower, side-by-side, things like that? Licensing, if 5 or more cars are to be sold in a 1-year period, a state dealer license is required. This is a requirement from the state. Storage, vehicles and parts not on display for sale must not be stored outdoors. Vehicles on display must be screened from adjacent residential properties. All service and repair services, all vehicle service and repair work must occur indoors. And then a nuisance standard, the use must not establish a nuisance in the form of noise, vibration, glare, fumes, odor, lighting, and/or electrical interference detectable off-premise. And so after some discussion about that standard number 2, what constitutes a vehicle, does it make sense to put a limit on vehicles depending on, or should that be something that the Planning Commission should decide when considering a permit, basically looking at a specific property and what would make sense for that property. So their recommendation was to strike that.
Further
standard.
caveat to that was really based on the acres and or frontage, footage
Yep.
that someone would have. You know, if you only have 25 feet and you're cramming everything in, that obviously looks different than if it's a parcel that's of substantial acreage, and felt that permitting it individually throughout that permitting process, we still have a level of consistency that we work through on those applications, but felt it be more appropriate than say for this.
So if I can, Mr. Chair, so on an application for somebody wanting to do this, to go through to the Planning Commission on a conditional use permit, are there going to be questions within the application that helps get those answers ahead of time? And
one of the things that we typically ask for, just because we kind of have a general use permit, is looking for any potential conflicts with the nearby land uses. And then also if some sort of plan, a site, whether it be a site plan, a business plan, or anything like that, could be included with the application as well, just to get some detail.
I think the conversation was had in terms of making sure that it doesn't reach junkyard standards.
That's
There's
right.
also regulations that are existing in our rules for that as well.
Yep.
I have a question on number 6 there. Service must be all done indoors. I mean, there's a lot of things that can probably be done outdoors. I mean, you can fix something on a vehicle outdoors. So are we saying that you can't repair a vehicle outdoors, out of the building?
Yeah, and one of the reasoning behind that, and this is something that I've seen in other ordinances, local ordinances as well, is just to really reduce the potential for nuisance, one being mainly noise and things like that. And then also to prevent the potential for, you might have, now you have a number of vehicles that are maybe not in working order, that are just sitting on a lot indefinitely. Because one of the challenges that we have when we're looking at folks who have, for example, junk automobiles on their property, is the explanation or excuse, depending on how you look at it, is, oh, well, I'm just working on this car. It's like, well, you've been working on it for probably 5 years now, so.
I'm just looking at someone driving up, or not driving, I guess, if you need a battery, if you want to change your battery on something, or just make an adjustment on something, on a carburetor, you have to go inside to do it, or, I mean, I guess I don't know, no one's going to be there watching anyway, I don't think, but I just think that's quite a restriction on somebody, that they can't repair something outside of the building, so.
Yeah, and that's a very good point, Mr. Chair, and I think, though, having the repair service work must occurring indoors, I think if someone wanted to fill up a tire or change a battery. I don't know if that's necessarily going to dissuade someone from doing that, just because that's a really fast thing that can happen. So I think that there is more of the benefit of preventing the accumulation of half worked on cars outside, as opposed to letting someone do something quick like that, like
I agree there
battery
should be
change.
something like that, not to prevent that, but I hope we're not restricting somebody too much. Yes, Paul?
Yeah, my same concern, and I'm sure you vetted this out at the meeting, but same thing, and knowing it could be this variable size, right? I mean, and so is it, when we come to a point that a car, and I'm thinking of a smaller operator on this, so now they're waiting for some part, supply chain thing, just an example. That car has to remain inside, or can they be allowed some type of fencing in their area where they can put these cars behind, or is that, and I appreciate the whole thing about seeing a bunch of junk cars. I mean, we've been down that road so many times, and the fencing and all that, but I'll pick on one place, I'll just do it. So when I drive, what I don't want to see, obviously, in my opinion, is what we see when we drive through Saban. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But yet at the same time, in smaller places, is there a way to work with fencing with these people, or, for temporary storage of cars? Is that not was that talked about?
That was not really talked about, mainly because this use is this use is primary for the sales of vehicles, and it was meant to be add in like small minor repair work, kind of almost as like an ancillary use to that, because we already have like a auto repair business, things like that in our code already.
Okay, I misunderstood that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Now, if we can certainly, if you as a board feel like you'd want to add something in where, as opposed to all vehicle service and repair work must be screened from adjacent properties, as opposed to occurring indoors, you could certainly modify the language of that as well, if that's something.
Yeah, I don't want to get too prescriptive on anything. I'm kind of like in Frank's camp here, that, just make sure we have someone that can succeed without it turning into a junkyard.
Yeah, and, just with this service, just in practicality, if we get a call, someone's changing a battery outside, or someone's changing a tire, I don't think we're going to respond to that. But what this would give us the ability to do within reason is, this person has 10 cars, they're half disassembled, and all their parts are strewn out all over their property.
Right.
This would give us, having this standard in there would give the county the ability to rectify an issue like that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Is this would just be for unincorporated areas, wouldn't it?
Correct, yep. So currently, this use is currently allowed in the highway commercial zoning district and the limited highway commercial zoning district, and it's not permitted anywhere else. And, when the applicants brought this to our attention, it was kind of, we as a staff kind of thought it was strange that this is something that was not permitted as a use in the agricultural service center district, because especially the part with the tractor sales and things, allowing something like that, that's definitely seems like it would fit. And that's where, even looking at our current comprehensive plan and our previous comprehensive plan, the goals, the policies in there, in both of those plans, was always to encourage that type of commercial activity to occur in our agricultural service center zoning districts, so in our unincorporated communities.
So all of the incorporated areas, they set their own standards in terms of, permittability or
Yep,
have you
correct.
for these types of facilities. And then my other question that I had is, when we do this, are our overlay districts still precedent?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, thank you.
Any further questions from the council? Anybody in the audience who wishes to speak on this? Okay. Very good.
Mr. Chair, I just will say that this was in your packet as well. The Planning Commission did go through the criteria and review standards for a zoning district amendment, and they were found affirmative in all of the review standards. This is something you can certainly go through, or in your motion, if you want, you would essentially be adopting what the Planning Commission found. So we do not have to go through this at all, but just want to let you know that the Planning Commission did go through these review standards, and they didn't feel like this use would have any issues with any of them or conflict.
Sorry, I probably jumped ahead a little bit there before you got done.
That's okay.
So Matt, that really means facts of finding, right?
Essentially, yep.
Mr. Chair, I move to close the hearing.
Okay, we're going to motion to close the hearing.
Second motion?
A second. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, I'd move ordinance 2023-2 and accept the findings of fact established by the Planning Commission.
No second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to accept the findings. Any further discussion?
Just,
All in excuse me.
sorry, Mr. Chair, I think it's important to probably note that by doing this is a step to continue what we're trying to do as a board, is to continue to make Clay County a vibrant place for all folks, especially the business climate. And when we have individuals with business plans that come forward, if it's identified that there is a gap and it's something that's not allowed and really does make sense, which it seems to, in this case, make sense and make business, a more friendly business climate in all of Clay County, while taking into account the concerns of the folks that might live in that area, this is a positive step forward. So thanks to the applicant for bringing this forward. Thanks, Matt, for the work, and I'm excited about what this will mean.
I guess my only concern was that all the repairs must occur inside. It just seems too restrictive to me. But
I think maybe that falls under maintenance instead of, if I drive by a place and see someone changing tires on a car outside, I'm probably not going to call the Planning Commission to see if they're permitted to do so. Now, if you drive by and see for months and months and months, like maybe happens at my house, where projects take forever to get done, then maybe you're more likely to call.
very good. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good.
Thank you.
All righty.
Yeah. Do you think that'll help?
Okay, with that, we'll go on to the Adult Mental Health Local Advisory Council Annual Report. I don't know how many people would come forward for that one.
Laughing at my joke.
When do we have this morning?
Couple?
If I'm not there, then.
Aye.
Okay, Allison, you want to start us out there?
Actually, Ann will take the lead. Okay.
Good morning. My name is Ann Burrell. I'm a family member, representative, and co-chair of the Clay County Adult Mental Health Advisory Council. Much easier to say LAC, and that's usually what we do call ourselves. On behalf of this council membership, my fellow co-chair, Allison Welbeck, and I would just like to speak to you a little bit about the submitted 2023 report, but also to thank you for your ongoing help and support of the Clay County residents that are feeling the frustration and often detrimental effects of living with the complex and nuanced conditions associated with mental illness. So thank you for that. Our report will be focusing on 5 different needs that we've identified and some recommendations to go along with those. Allison?
As we move out of the public health state of emergency, mental health is even now more important than ever before, and including for individuals who do not have mental illness. The World Health Organization defines mental health as a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her own community. While our report will primarily focus on addressing the needs of Clay County adults living with mental illness, we do recognize that we must also focus attention on creating policies, systems, and environments that will promote mental health and well-being for all residents to prevent or mitigate the impact of mental illness and support recovery. Our first recommendation is about crisis services. As you can see in our report, the nearest crisis stabilization units are in Detroit Lakes and Fergus Falls. Transportation, often by ambulance, case managers, and that can be costly and time-consuming. Gull Harbor in Moorhead is licensed for crisis beds, but the high demand for intensive residential treatment services statewide has not allowed them to be utilized in this way. However, they have recently hired and are training staff, but with shortages of staff for those types of facilities, this will continue to be a struggle providing services for crisis services. Sorry. So our recommendation is to build a crisis stabilization unit in the county. This will reduce the high cost of traveling out of the county to a crisis stabilization unit. And it would also encourage individuals to seek that lower cost service rather than going across the river to an inpatient unit. Also, we have individuals who are in crisis and need non-emergency medical transportation to inpatient hospitalization, who do not have family or friends who can transport them, must rely on ambulance services. Utilizing a cab service requires the individual to have enough funds on hand, or payment for the cab through insurance requires advance notice. I believe 24 to 48 hours. I don't know about anybody else, but I don't schedule my crises. So we would like for the creation of a RFP to build and utilize protected transportation services. It's a MA billable service. Our next one is for does not meet medical criteria. This is for continued inpatient psychiatric hospitalization. As soon as a resident no longer meets the criteria for hospital level of care, the county is responsible for 100% of the costs associated with their care at the current facility until another placement can be found for a step down in treatment level. Costs recently incurred by Clay County can be upwards of $1,700 a day. Recently, this cost Clay County over $80,000 because another placement could not be found quickly. These dollars go to the general fund. Our recommendation is to advocate for the state to dedicate all funds paid by counties for clients that do not meet medical criteria to build out the current Minnesota mental health system, particularly in greater Minnesota, instead of putting them in the general fund. And we'd also like you to advocate to the state that this revenue stream should be invested in stabilizing existing beds and care options and/or increasing our state's capacity to meet needs across the full mental health continuum of care.
Okay, the third area of need that we are emphasizing this year has to do with housing. Applying for housing can be an economic as well as an emotional stress. Here we are asking that you consider teaming up with other county commissioners across the state and working together to push for policy change that could reduce the occurrence of redundant background and credit checks. Also, we see a need that is occurring very much in the county, and we're hoping that through your authority in Clay County, you could stand behind and support people that experience the overwhelming stresses associated with inadequate attention by some landlords to the appropriate and expedient maintenance of their properties.
As for mental health workforce shortages, we would appreciate it if the board could advocate for the state to recognize professional licenses for providers, mental health, nurses, et cetera, from other compact states to allow border communities to hire these critical roles and ease the burden on DHS for license transfers more easily. Also, to advocate for the state to increase wages for direct care professionals and to encourage DHS to adopt and encourage coaching style instead of leaving facilities and professionals feeling penalized by inspections. Mental health with co-occurring substance use disorders, also called dual diagnosis. I have been working with a good friend of mine trying to get services for mental health and substance use disorder. It has been exceedingly frustrating. He goes to one place to get medication for mental health needs, and then another place for substance use disorder needs. And then back to the mental health to see how that's going, and then going to another place for treatment for substance use disorder. When we all know that these things do not occur separately, they occur together. It is a very high prevalence that people with a substance use disorder has an underlying mental health issue. We would like to encourage providers to honor comprehensive assessments done within the last 6 months by a qualified licensed drug and alcohol counselor for outpatient or residential treatment placements, unless the person's treatment needs have changed significantly. While my friend was in jail, he had a comprehensive needs assessment. And then once he got out and started seeking places to get his treatment, they wanted to do another assessment. And that costs a lot of money each time you do it. People are, as I like to say, being assessed to death. And each time they go through an assessment, there is a lot of digging up of old trauma. And in order to move forward, we need to stop re-traumatizing individuals.
Allison, can I ask you a question on that? So if that is being done while incarcerated, is that something that has been judicially requested?
Yes.
So that becomes something that's a little bit, I mean, that if a judge determines that assessment needs to be done, I'm just wondering how we get involved with that.
Well, and that's not the major issue. It's the issue that once they're out of jail, that when they go to seek treatment somewhere, that place of treatment is also requesting assessment.
I see.
When that initial assessment was done like a couple weeks prior.
Okay.
It's redundant.
Okay, so that's where the redundancy comes in.
Yes.
It was done in jail, and then they get out, and now they want another one.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We also would like to review the need of treating co-occurring substance use and mental illness in a facility adjacent to the new substance abuse crisis facility. Our last recommendation is to reduce waste in public programs through technology. This one's my favorite. Recently, I got an application for SNAP. In the mail came 10 pages, and 7 of them were for me to keep. And this is common amongst different public programs, housing, SNAP, MA. There's so many papers. And you have the costs of printing, the costs of staff putting it together and mailing, and all these costs. I would like for the county to implement on a county level whatever applications are sent out, but then also advocate to the state to allow participants to opt in to electronic updates and allow for applications and recertifications to be done electronically. With a SNAP recertification, you get the papers in the mail. However, you can apply online. Why not have the option to recertify online? I went through a SNAP recertification recently, got those 10 pages, sent 3 back, and then I get a phone call from someone at the county asking me if I had time for the interview. If the person doesn't have time, then they schedule an appointment. So that's wasted time. If the person has time, then they go through it and they ask you all the questions you just filled out and sent to them. You're giving the same answers that you already wrote down, wasted more time. So we would like that so that people can do all of this electronically, and that would save time and money.
Who's holding that up? I mean, is the county holding that up, or?
Actually, I don't even think anybody's addressed this yet, anywhere. So this would be something new. We did bring this to the attention of our representatives when Jenna Cayley and I went to Mental Health Day on the Hill. And we hope to continue following up on all our concerns with them.
Okay.
Any other questions about our recommendations?
Oh, go on.
All right, then finally, we present to you on your last page, for your approval, the current membership of Clay County's LAC. And I want to thank you for your time.
Mr. Chair, I would move the recommended membership for the Adult Mental Health Local Advisory Council.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
All right, Mr. Chair, thank you. I appreciate the recommendations and the expected outcomes. A lot of, as you know, a lot of these are within Clay County's authority. A lot of these are within other regulating agencies statewide. I'm appreciative that we have a commissioner that serves on the Association of Minnesota Counties Policy Committee, which I believe is Commissioner Krabenoft, and these are great items that the commissioner can bring forward to discussion at those meetings, the Fall Policy Conference. Certainly, there are some in here that have been policy platforms and priorities. I know the conversations, I'm on Environment and Natural Resources, but I've heard of some of these that are. I know our social service director is here. We can certainly talk through the feasibility of some of the items if there's an ability for action. Some of these are short-term, some are certainly long-term. I appreciate this. There's a variety of input through all of these, so thank you for that.
If we adopt this policy, who's going to follow up with this policy?
No, well, the motion that we have is just to approving the board,
Membership.
the membership of the board.
Okay.
in terms of the recommendations, Mr. Chair, I think we need to review those. I think we need to have conversations with Rhonda and our social service people who are involved with these areas to see which of these things is, and even as Commissioner Mojo stated, there are some things that are in our, I think you mentioned, get all county commissioners together, and we do that through our Association of Minnesota Counties. That's where that is, and that goes to exactly what Paul is on, that serves in the Health and Human Services, right, Paul? That's one you're in. And what we always need to be careful of in that regard is that we're following what is AMC policy when we want to go for legislation. We can certainly ask for something in addition, but we can't be asking for something that might be not what's in the platform as is. So, I mean, we can expand further with our legislatures on things, but not, I should say, it should not be contrary to AMC's position. That's kind of what we have there, but.
Okay.
If I, Mr. Chair? Yeah, so again, I just want to thank Allison and all the others that have been, Ann and leadership. You know, I've been attending meetings now for about 4 months, so a lot of things are pretty new, but we've had talks afterwards, and Allison's always been very gracious in helping me along on this. You spent a lot of time on this document, bringing it forward, the thought you've developed over a period of time, and certainly, if I can come back, yes, I think we can't have the conflict with the state, but at the same time, as you are suggesting, these awarenesses need to be, taken attention to, and again, leading to development of conversation that, hopefully try to rectify or bridge the gap in some of those areas. So I'm on board with you, and we'll see where the conversation continues.
Mr. Chair. Yes. Yeah, just, I'm looking at this, and it really is a very concise observation of where the problems are. A lot of it comes from state funding and other issues, but there's a couple things that have resonated through my career here for the last 17 years being in this community and working as police chief here. One is the frustrating lack of resources that we have because we're in a gap. We have North Dakota resources right across the river that serve 2/3 or better of our population, but don't serve us. And we have a state that doesn't realize that we exist. The thought that we have to talk about emergency transportation to two smaller communities that have resources and we don't is very frustrating. The fact that we have to recognize that the state of Minnesota's licensure procedures, and my wife's a master level social worker, and her license wasn't recognized when we moved back here, which was her home state, and she had to get a Minnesota license. And that's with a career of 20 plus, almost 30 years when we moved here. These are things that need to be looked at. But I asked the commission to keep something in mind that's mentioned here. This community totally lacks emergency stabilization for people in crisis. They get dumped in shelters. And the shelters are left to try and figure out how to deal with somebody who's having a mental health crisis. The hospitals across the river sent them here. They walk in, and if they're admitted and they have a crisis, the resources aren't there for them. It is a problem. We have got a long-term discussion that we've had looking at the substance abuse crisis facility we're building. And right now, there's no funding for this long-term goal, but at least we're discussing it. I had the opportunity to be part of forming a stabilization unit in my prior hometown, where we had social workers, mental health professionals, doctors, and registered nurses, and 7 beds to serve the needs of one police department. And we kept it full, and it worked. Because people were dual diagnosis, they got dried out, they got leveled, there was research done on what their meds were, and they were processed. There weren't a lot of places to get the long-term housing, and that was the issue that was being dealt with when I moved here. Right now, we really need to keep that goal in mind. As funding becomes available, if we can locate funding sources, if we can form partnerships, we need to put a stabilization unit out where we're putting our substance abuse crisis center now. And long-term housing for folks is essential. The people, particularly seniors that are having difficulty maintaining housing stability and end up in the shelters and end up in crisis, we need to figure something out to where they can get stabilized and there's someplace they can go. Because my experience as a police chief here, if you leave them out, they're going to be victimized in one form or another. So that's my little rant. And listen to this great presentation. It stirred a lot of the frustration that this community, which is a caring community, but has not addressed these things. And the fact that we're a border state or border community has only exacerbated the problems we've got because the resources are all east of us. And we don't have access to all the resources that our North Dakota neighbors have. So I appreciate you bringing this forward, and I didn't mean to rant, but this hits a lot of buttons. Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, we got a motion on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries, so.
Thank you.
Work on this project done. Hopefully we get some satisfaction.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, with that, we'll go into Adult Mental Health Local Advisory Council report. Shell and
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for having us. I'm Michelle Thordahl. I am the Chair of the Children's LAC.
Good morning. I'm Joni Maidenwald. I'm a therapist and a Division Director at the Village Family Service Center.
So we're here to talk about the Children's LAC. We've had a busy year. We've been working on a lot of different projects. One of the things that we really wanted to focus on this year was really defining what our group is, what are our goals, and really looking at our membership. We felt like we were really missing some people at the table, so we spent a lot of time making those phone calls, sending those emails, trying to get people to the table, and we've really been able to build up our membership because of that. Another thing that we really wanted to focus on was revamping our survey. You know, we've historically had very low responses to the survey that we would submit. The council spent a lot of time really looking at the survey and trying to really focus in on what we thought maybe the board would want to hear on, and really focus on how can we get that out to people to get those responses back. Another thing that we worked on were mental health awareness activities. We sponsored a billboard at the beginning of May of last year. We donated funds to support Kid Fest, which had over 900 people in attendance, which is a great turnout. We also sponsored the training How to Talk to New Americans About Mental Health, which was organized by the Early Childhood Initiative. It sounded like that was a great opportunity for people to come together. I think they served a meal and it was very well attended. We also wrote handwritten thank you notes that were provided by former Commissioner Cayley to all of our Clay County foster parents in response to Foster Care Appreciation Month last May. And that was kind of a fun project, just something different to do, just to show our appreciation to them for all the hard work that they do. So to kind of go into the survey, like I already mentioned, we really wanted to make this survey something that we could use the data from. You know, historically, I think we've had responses from maybe less than 10 parents, maybe 20 some professionals over the years, and we just felt like that really wasn't helpful to anybody. We spent a lot of time on it, but we weren't really getting the results that we wanted. And so I think the key was really getting all 5 school districts on board to distribute the survey for us. It took a little bit of work, but they were all on board and agreed to do that. And I think that was really a success that we saw, and we really had a great turnout. We had 229 responses for the parent survey, which was kind of that was great. And then the professional survey had 75 responses. So as far as the parent survey's results, I won't go in through everything, but you can kind of see, and we pared down our survey questions to just 5 questions. Some were open-ended questions where they could give us open-ended answers, or, you know, give us some information that we thought maybe we'd want to gather. So it weren't just yes and no questions. But the first question was, how would you know how to access mental health services if you needed to? And it was on a scale of 0 to 5, with 1 being very knowledgeable of how to access services to 5 being not sure at all. And you can see here from the results of the people who did the survey, there's more people that felt that they were knowledgeable about how to access services, which I think is great. But obviously we still have some more work to do because it's pretty even as far as that goes.
The next question that we had was just asking about experiencing barriers to accessing mental health services for your family or your children. And as you can see, again, by the results, the majority slightly said no, followed by not needing to access services. One thing we really focused on this year was to try and get a broader spectrum of who we were surveying, and not just those that are already engaged in service programs, by sharing their survey with the clientele that we already have engaged with our social services or with mental health agencies. So this gave us a broader spectrum to kind of show that the majority have not experienced barriers, but also not needed to access services. From there, we asked what barriers that they have experienced, and as you'll see, a theme through this report is long wait times and access to services, as well as just affordability and not being able to perhaps afford their insurance, or being on high deductible plans or things like that. The next question we asked are there services you need that are not available in our county? Some of these are similar to what you just heard with the adult LAC, but more inpatient hospitalization options, more residential treatment options for children. Respite care is something that we're always in a shortage of for children. More providers and trauma-trained therapists. The fourth question we asked is, if your child has received mental health services, which service has been most helpful for your child? The majority said individual or family therapy, followed by the school counselors or the school staff, and then third was psychiatric or medication management. And we know that when we can link those 3 together, we have a really strong pedestal for helping students and children be successful in their mental health. Lastly, we had asked about other comments regarding gaps in our system of care for children. They identified the gaps to be the need to access mental health appointments, having providers available, resources, some difficulty navigating the system of how to access services, high deductibles or lack of insurance, communication with the schools, rural communities feeling like they are left behind, that a lot of the mental health resources for children are in the Moorhead area. More information on service providers in the county. That is something that our LAC is going to be working on this year. And the lack of immediate help in mental health crisis, again, similar to what we heard with the adult team. And some gaps in services with in-home therapy, and to increase school-based mental health providers, where we have therapists on site at the local schools.
So as far as the professional survey results go, both surveys were available through a Google survey. We had done a QR code last year and distributed it out on social media, and sent it out to local agencies, as well as having posters posted around the county and in other community agencies. So you can kind of see, we listed out who maybe would have responded as far as the professional survey results go. And so again, we're looking at asking them, what do they, feel like their clients are maybe struggling with to access adequate or appropriate mental health services, and you can see the responses there. And Joni and I were talking before this, and we can't remember if 0 was we can't remember the scaling, if the 0 was no trouble at all to a lot of trouble. So I apologize for that. Hopefully I can get that information to you. But either way, we did kind of feel like most of the results were right in the middle. So apologies for that. And then, talking about asking them, do they think that there are any barriers in accessing those services? 92% of providers feel like there are barriers to their families accessing those services. So then we asked that follow-up question as far as what are the barriers that they're seeing? And you can see overwhelmingly they feel like transportation is an issue, wait times, and I think completing paperwork was the third answer to their question. So for the next one, in thinking about children and families you serve, are there any services that aren't available or services that are limited in availability? So some of the providers said skills services are very limited and not available in rural communities, which we heard earlier. Wait lists for autism services, that was a big one. We heard a lot about that from these surveys. Youth substance abuse treatment centers, child psychiatry testing. We know that there's always wait times for that and really difficult to get in if you're a new patient. School counselors, lack of service providers for waivered services. We heard that a lot too. A lot of parents who are navigating through the system are looking for supports for their children in their home to keep them in their home. And, getting on waivered services was one of those things. But what they don't realize is once they get on those waivered services, they might be eligible for a service, but that service provider might not have the employees to fill that. So then they're still left with no support at home. And then a need for step-down care for inpatient or partial hospitalization.
The next question that we had for providers is really formulated off of a question that we learned really early in our mental health careers, which is the miracle question, which is if you had a magic wand, what would you change? And so we thought that was important to ask the providers, just that open-ended question. And remarkably, we heard more service providers. Right now we are in a national shortage of mental health providers. The needs of mental health across the spectrum of ages is far exceeding what we have for providers. And so with that, of course, comes long wait times. Additionally, you'll hear us talk later, we also lost quite a few providers during COVID. Providers were becoming very burned out. They were dealing with COVID in their personal life, and they were also then supporting their clients during COVID. And so it was basically a 24/7 of stress associated with COVID. And so we did lose some providers, and the needs for the services increased. The other feedback that we heard was just services being able to access quickly in crisis. Again, that speaks to the shortage. Having a one-stop shop where, as you heard on the adult team, where you can get all of those services in one stop, that you don't have to continue trying to line up transportation for different days at different times to get to your med appointment, your case management, your therapy, your family therapy, but just being able to do it all in one place. And then making mental health related jobs more attractive to promote more people coming into the field. And lastly, was reducing the stigma of mental health and accessing services.
So some of the successes that the LAC really wanted to highlight here for the board is that, school-based mental health services are available in all 5 public county schools in our county, which I think is really great. The council focused on increasing participation from consumers with lived experience. We partnered with our Clay County Youth Leadership Council, which is led by Crystal Johnson and Lacey Hubert within our social service agency. That's a group of individuals who have aged out of the foster care system, and some have some mental health needs as well. And we were able to have a few of them participate over the year with our group, which we hadn't had before. And I really think the times that they were at our meetings, they really gave us some really important feedback, and it was really impactful. So we're hoping to continue that going into this next year. We really wanted to focus also as having those rural school districts on our LAC council. We hadn't had representation from our rural schools, and we can now say that we have representation from each school that sit on the council and attend the meeting regularly. So that's been a success. Collaboration among the LAC partners as a result of conversations that arrive at council meetings, that networking, I think that continues to be the highlight of our council. Talking about the survey again, our rate increased dramatically due to the outreach and the efforts of the council. And Representative Heather Keeler did attend one of our meetings, looking for feedback, suggestions for legislative actions from the LAC. So that was a good partnership that we also had over this last year.
In looking at our recommendations, one thing that stands out is just that there is a different wait list for individuals that have state-funded insurance, such as medical assistance, versus those that have commercial insurance when it comes to Rule 79 case management services. Case management services can be really vital to a family. They can help with transportation. They can, assist at school, assist in the therapy appointments, assist at home. However, because of funding needing to be maintained throughout the calendar year, sometimes the commercial insurances are able to be accessed more quickly than the state-funded referrals to ensure that they have MA assistance throughout the year. So that is a challenge for sure, and something that we would like to see improved. We also have a recommendation to try to increase our staff for mental health services and providers. Some positions are competing with fast food because that's where we're at with our wages. We have not seen an increase in the state, in the MA or PMAP and the state-funded insurance's reimbursement rates for many, many years. DHS is currently going through a rate study to increase that, but it's been over 15 years since we've seen an increase. And so as agencies, we're unable to continue to increase cost of living based on our reimbursement rates. So in some of our positions, we are fighting for entry-level positions with people in the fast food industry. We also need to continue to bring awareness to the shortages of providers, psychiatrists, therapists, case managers, foster care providers, autism providers, and respite care providers in our agency are in desperate need of more. And then just to continue to fund those programs, respite services, the coordinated intensive bridging services, or it's called SIBS most frequently, has been a really successful alternative to out-of-home placement, and case management services. Like I talked about before, the wait list for children that have medical assistance is different from those who have commercial insurances. Continuing to promote the mobile crisis response program to help those that are in crisis situations, and continuing to fund the programs that support the school-based mental health services. As Michelle was talking, we are very grateful and fortunate that we have been able to embed mental health services into all of our schools in the county. And lastly, what I was sharing about earlier is just increasing the awareness of the jobs to encourage more people to come into the profession. With the loss of providers and the increased need, we have experienced high level of burnout. Those that are still working in the field are experiencing much more crisis on their caseload, higher caseloads, just higher needs of clients, because when you're waiting longer to get in, your symptoms are exacerbated. And so by the time you do see a provider, you're typically in a worse shape you were than when you called a couple months earlier to get the appointment. And so just really trying to encourage at the high school and the intro levels in the colleges about the jobs and what mental health in the workforce looks like here.
Thank you. I want to go to, you mentioned in your successes, and one of them was our local representative was there and listened for feedback and suggestions for legislation. Do we know if there's been any opportunities to submit any legislation yet? And if so, how would we know what that is to be able to help support? I think in both the adult and child, there's a lot of suggestions on how we need to work with the state to help resolve some of these issues, because quite frankly and bluntly, some of these needs the state to step in, if we really want to get this done. But it's also important for us to be aware of what legislation is going on and how we can support it. So you know, I think it's great that you had a representative come and at least listen in and ask for some information, but I think it's equally important to follow up on what is being proposed. So that's my comment.
Any other comments? Okay.
So we would just like to ask the board to approve the membership of the council, and I believe there is a mental health proclamation that we would ask the council to approve as well.
So do you want the membership approved?
Yes. And there's a list of members on the front page.
I'll make a motion for that membership to be approved.
Second.
Yeah, we've got a motion and a second to approve the membership of the Clay County Local Advisory Council for Children's Mental Health. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes, and next thing is
And a mental health proclamation
for the
for,
Mental Health Month?
Yep, for Mental Health Month.
Move we approve the proclamation.
Okay, I think we should probably read that mental health proclamation. Whereas mental health is essential to everyone's overall health and well-being, and whereas all Americans experience times of difficulty and stress in their lives, and whereas identifying and addressing mental health concerns earlier improves the quality of life for adults and children and their chance to succeed, and whereas Clay County has made a commitment to the community-based systems of mental health care for all residents and has appointed local mental health advisory council for adults, children, and whereas each business, school, government agency, healthcare provider, organization, and citizens share the responsibility to address mental health concerns and promote mental health, wellness and prevention efforts. Therefore, we, the Clay County Board of Commissioners, proclaim May 2023 as Mental Health Month, and specifically May 11th as Children's Mental Health Day in Clay County, Minnesota. As Commissioners of Clay County, we call upon the citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools in Clay County to recommit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of mental health, the steps our citizens can take to protect their mental health, and the need for appropriate and accessible services for all people with mental health conditions. Okay. You make a motion to approve this?
Make a motion to approve the proclamation.
Okay.
I'll second.
And we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
One last note, if I may, just real quick,
Go ahead.
sorry. I want to thank you two. You do a lot of work here with this LAC. You run very efficient meetings, and what I've seen over the last few months, the way you brought in the additional groups, that reaching out, and then also with your survey, just, you do tremendous work, and thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we go into request approval of grantee recommendation for the local homeless prevention aid funds. I think Rhonda's got that one. Sitting back there taking all this in here.
Yep. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Yeah, I too would like to thank our local advisory councils. They have some amazing reports, and, you know, as we sit at the table with our local advisory councils, a lot of the information that was shared is information we, of course, agree with as well. Some really good recommendations coming out, some things that have legs and some things that are new, but all really good feedback and good information for us to build upon. So I'm hopeful that over the next year we can develop some committees and put some activities to some of these efforts to try to address some of the things that the LACs are presenting.
Yes, got a question. Okay, Rhonda, just, you know, being new here, so with all these ideas that come in, and kind of coming back to Commissioner Campbell's things about legislation, are there small groups that come together through your department that we try to get our heads together about what something might look like? So then, in particular myself or others, try to reach out to certain people within legislature, obviously our local ones, but there's also a bigger picture that we can be working through AMC or whatever. So how does that work?
Yeah, I think there's various committees that happen both in our region as well as the state as well as locally. Some of these topics that are bigger in terms of a crises facility, I think that we probably should look at establishing a smaller committee here at the county to really vet out where we're at, what we've done. We have had efforts over the years with grant applications, both to the State Department of Human Services as well as some federal grants that haven't necessarily, haven't resulted in funds to develop that facility. We actually have a grant application in right now with one of our local providers to establish a 10-bed crisis facility. We haven't heard on that. We're really hopeful. But that facility would meet some needs, but not all of our needs. So I think that if we were to get that grant, we'd want to come together to build on that, to think about how we could establish some additional beds that might help with the population, maybe that Commissioner Ebinger, you've talked about, some beds that might be short-term, supportive settings for folks that need it and can be discharged back to the community. So we have some things in the works, but I think establishing a committee that could meet more frequently to kind of keep the activities and the momentum going on some of these issues would be helpful. And the intent of the local advisory councils is to be a part of that process as well. So I'm thinking subcommittees from the local advisory councils might make sense. So those are some pieces we can sure vet out and move forward.
Thank you.
We have been communicating a little bit with Representative Keeler as recent as last week, and a good share of the issues that the Adult Local Advisory Council has brought up, we've fed that information to her as well. Right now, their AMC and Max are kind of doing a side-by-side of the House and Senate bills, and there is some information that will come out that I'm hopeful to bring to you to help kind of bring to the attention of Senator Kupek and Representative Keeler that can help kind of reconcile those bills and support the priorities that we would have here in Clay County.
And let's make sure we include Representative Joy, and then we have Representative Keel and Senator Johnson now, so we have a broader presence, which is helpful.
Very good.
Okay, I can say that it was really informative what these last two reports have been, I mean, some of the stuff that we never see happening here in the county, and it's just unless we hear from them, so.
We're really fortunate to have active local advisory councils here in our county. That's not consistent statewide, so I'm really proud of our local advisory councils, and they do a really nice job. Yep.
Very good.
All right, I am here in follow-up to a board discussion we had on February 14th regarding the local homeless prevention aid funds that the county was awarded to be available July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024. In the summary sheet, as you'll see, the board had agreed to issue a request for proposal for responders to reply to for the county where they would outline how they would meet the target population based on the grant requirements. We did have one responder, and I was quite surprised initially, but after talking with some of our community partners, I learned that our community partners really got together and decided they didn't want to compete against each other. They all work very closely together, and they decided to partner together and support the application that was submitted. So I think that really speaks to our community partnerships and our providers that are out there working with our folks that are homeless. The proposal that was selected, a review committee, including myself and 2 supervisors from my department, Administrator Steve and Commissioner Paul, and 3 other representatives, reviewed the proposal and made sure that that they responded to all of the required elements of the RFP. As indicated in the summary sheet, they are advocating to most of the funds to go toward hiring some staff. One of them would be to hire a housing advocate that would be housed with Community Action Lakes and Prairies. The second piece to that would be hiring an additional family case manager for Churches United, as well as a half-time shelter advocate for Churches United. In addition, they are proposing to have some of the funds set aside for direct payments to families who are struggling, whether that would be deposits, application fees, those kinds of things. The committee supported the application, and therefore I am recommending the board to consider that application as well, and if so moved, to make a motion to approve that, and then I would establish the contract with CAP-LP for those funds. And then they would subcontract with Churches United.
Thank you. So Rhonda, what we would be doing is we would be turning those grant dollars over to CAP-LP, and they would administer them. They would do the hires. They would be CAP-LP employees. They would not be county employees. Is that correct?
Correct. The funds would come to the county, and then we would disperse them to CAP-LP.
And I just, the only thing that I didn't see anything in here when and obviously this is dealing with housing. Was there any mention of Clay County HRA?
Clay County HRA received the RFP as well, and Clay County HRA partnered with Churches United and CAP-LP on the development of this application because it really will coordinate with the Homework Starts with Home program. So a lot of what is proposed here will partner and coordinate with some of the other homeless prevention funds and programs that are already existing. So they will be partnering with the Homework Starts with Home piece, which was a piece that I was most concerned about as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, just an observation, something we want to keep forward in our minds. This is great, and we are making steps forward in addressing homelessness, but there's steps backwards too. This month, Shelter for Women, run by Churches United, is being closed for lack of funding. I think it's 30 beds.
I wasn't thinking it was 30 beds, but you might be correct.
I may be remembering, but Safe Harbor.
Yeah.
And that's one resource less that we have. And this is a facility that responded to the needs of seniors and some people on walkers, women, domestic abuse. We are making steps forward, and there's a lot of people and a lot of energy going into this. And CAP-LP and churches are, I'm very fond of the work they do, but it is a struggle, and I hope the public is aware of it, that these facilities need our support, but most of all, state funding. Again, we get into it, and I don't think we have the presence with our local legislators. And as Commissioner Mojo just indicated, we have 2 more who are now representing parts of Clay County. their voices need to be heard, and this needs to be the mental health issues and the homeless issues we have, and our resources are split because of that river. And I just, you know, I have constituents that are involved in this and have called me, and I've contacted you guys, and you've got all on your plate you can do, and you're doing good work. But this issue is still prominent in this community, and it's a problem. And I hope we'll continue to address it, and I hope we can get some help from the state.
Yeah, absolutely devastating for the homeless shelter to have to close. And we are absolutely seeing significant mental health issues for folks that are entering our shelters, and our shelters are really struggling, as well as we are in terms of how to best meet those needs. Representative Keeler had her Pathways Home Act, which was significant funding to address homelessness issues. It was not as complete in the Senate bill, and that's one piece. I did reach out to Senator Kupek on to kind of elicit some support in regards to those pieces of that bill, because it really had multiple things in there that would help our community and across the state, and particularly our shelters. So that's a piece that I'm hoping to learn a little bit more this week in terms of where that's falling. But she was concerned that it was not as fully funded in the Senate bill that she was hoping. So it's a piece to be looking at for sure.
How long are these funds available? I mean, I'm looking at, you're gonna hire a half-time person, giving her salary this year, or
Right.
him or her, giving her a salary for this year and for next year. It's gonna take most of the funds, not most of them, but they're gonna take, probably have them, the funds to pay for that person.
The legislation indicates a reoccurring allocation for the next 6 years. The issue is that the allocation may not be consistent from year to year. It's based on a formula. It's based on population and and student-based aid. So each year, they will be looking at those two data sets and distributing the pot of money accordingly to the counties. So that is the danger, that we may be approving $223,000 this year, and that may not be the allocation next year. So it is a piece that we'll have to continue to evaluate with our contracted provider, and assure that they're meeting the targets and the goals that are set out for the contract.
I mean, it could be a short-term employment. I mean, if the funds don't keep coming.
Yeah, I mean, the hope would be that the funding would continue for the next 6 years at that equivalent level, and we'd be able to maintain the staffing resources we put in place, but there's certainly no guarantee.
No, and you're right, what I was going to talk about. As part of that screening committee, we had that discussion, and one of the things again, where it's not 100% assured, at least we felt strongly about CAP-LP being this partner that we're working with that has a solid foundation behind it. And hopefully it'll become integral within their program to give it, additional support in some ways if it would waver. Use that word. And I think it was a really important piece that we had that, they got staffing already and other things that can lend a hand, I think, if need be, to keep the position going. That's always my hope. I want to come back. Kevin, did you want to add?
Well,
something to that?
I agree, and I think, I like the idea of CAP-LP, but the other part of this, Rhonda, when you say that this could go out so each year it needs to be renewed and the dollar amount might be different, would that also require a new RFP every year, or would we have the ability to keep the original RFP and keep CAP-LP, because that could be another component of it, is if we're required through the process to RFPs every year,
No, we are not. We are not required to do RFPs every year. In fact, we weren't required to do one initially. The county really had the control on how to use the funds. But we really recognize the expertise of the folks in our community and want the funds to go with that expertise in serving the population. So we could make a decision each year on whether we continue to fund the current project, or if there are reasons we feel we'd want to not do that and issue an RFP, we could choose to do that as well.
That's at the county's discretion on that.
Correct.
Thank you. That's good.
And to finish up, I want to come back to the other piece you were speaking to about talking with Rep. Keeler, and in her part, now it's over in the Senate. So as of today or last couple of days, right now is that, do you know when that's coming to the Senate? And here's where I'm going with this. As a board, is that something we should be getting the word out, especially to Senator Kupek and Senator Johnson?
Yes, I connected with Angie Teese, the AMC representative, yesterday. She had reached out to me in regards to some of these issues. Right, I'm hopeful today we will have some side-by-side comparisons. And the idea was for folks in my position to reach out to all of you as commissioners and try to make our outreach. So I am hopeful that I will have something to you within the next day or two that kind of highlights some of those priority areas.
Maybe we can do a little call to action, so to speak.
Yep.
But Commissioner Craven, I think it's important, and like you stated, I think it's important, and I'm glad what you just said, that we have a AMC policy analysis that is working with you on this, that's dealing with these legislatures, because one of the things, and I said earlier today, is that part of our responsibility of being a member of AMC is to follow AMC policy. And, and if the policy direction of AMC would be going in a different direction, then we'd have to be nervous about that. But if it's something that's maybe not included in the current AMC platform that we think should, then by all means, we should be doing that. But I just, the importance of, I remember one time I was chair of MRCC, which is now MRC, and sometimes that board liked to take on its own policy, and sometimes it would interfere with AMC's policy, and then lo and behold, AMC came to the MRC and said, no, you can't do that. So that's all I'm telling you that as a newer commissioner, that we have to be mindful of that. So.
Okay.
Did we have a motion on this yet?
Oh, I would be looking for a motion.
Yeah, I would move the grant allocation funds of $223,581 be designated to Lakes and Prairies Community Action Partnership.
Second?
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the funds. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
All right, thank you.
spend it wisely. Boy, we're right on time here. Jackie did a good job in getting all the timing stuff. Getting used to us, okay. All right, we'll start out with Kevin this week.
Okay, on April 25th, we had an insurance committee meeting, and we talked about a few things. And ultimately, it was kind of a recap of where we are now in terms of claims to revenues and potential what rate increases would look like. Fortunately for us now, this next year, we have a cap that's to the tune of, I think it's 8 this year, 8% increase. Had we not had that cap in there, we could have been looking at an increase of around 23% according to the data that's been submitted. So, so ultimately, I think our insurance committee, the real conversation that we continue to have is, how do we prepare ourselves to go self-insured? That was a huge amount of the conversation that went on. And so amongst all of our different members of the insurance committee, they feel strongly that we should be, still looking in that direction. But in order to do that, for example, right now, based on our claims history, if we went self-insured, we could have potential cash needed in the first quarter of a year of needing to pay claims of about 1.4 million. And as you know, I think we started this 2 years ago. I think the first year we put in $200,000, and this last year we put in $250,000. So we're at $450,000 that's to help build up so that we can start this. And we're about $1 million short based on the numbers. So
Another 5 years.
so the whole point of this, but we do have, the beauty of it is we, for the next 2 years, we do have these rate guarantees. But at the same point in time, because we have the 8% guarantee, that doesn't mean that maybe we shouldn't still be taking a portion of what it would have been without it and helping set that aside because we need to ultimately get to a good fiscal place where when we go self-insurance, we can cover those first claims. And there's some other things that can be looked at too in terms of reinsurance. And then there was some other, they did do a benefit survey, and then we did make a recommendation to move one.
Well, there are two places, excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah. That I took note of, mainly two areas we talked about, potentially the survey, whether we should mandate that health insurance when, in fact, there are two employees that are hires here, why them to have two and policies, and then the other one would be for those on Medicare, do they need that additional mandate of that additional insurance? Right. And of course, as we talked about, there's some practicality in those two areas that maybe a change, but then we don't know the cost if people pull out of the problem, how it affects the others. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion about people who have multi-coverage, people who might have coverage through the VA or who, there's a few instances where we have both spouses work for the county. And so they're both required to carry insurance, and could changes be made there? So those are things that still are in discussion about. And there will be more to come on that. I think we've got another meeting is coming up pretty soon. On the 26th, I had a Prairie Lake Solid Waste meeting in Perham. Revenues and expenditures are fine there. We approved purchasing a wheel loader and that's to the tune of $250,000 that we have there. And the beauty of that is we now had an internal service fund of $1,050,000. So we were able to take that purchase out of that and not impact that wouldn't be a budgetary impact that would cause us to increase our tipping fees. Not for that particular reason, and so far the revenues over expenditures are good. The big issue that we're talking about now is, so right now Prairie Lakes sends all their fines to the Clay County landfill, but all the ash goes to a landfill in Otter Tail County. And there's a lot more weight in ash and stuff than there are in fines. And there's like 3 truckloads a day of ash go to the Otter Tail County landfill. And we've been advised that there's 6 to 8 years of life left on that. And all of a sudden you're gonna have to have a new source for ash. So our group is gonna be going and looking at a facility that turns ash into other product that can be used like for roads and that type of thing. So I think we're doing that. We're going to take that tour in June. But Otter Tail County is basically, put us on notice that pretty soon there's not going to be a place to take the ash. And so And then it becomes, does Otter Tail County do something and own it, or does a 5-member group do something and own it? And of course, MPCA was there and they said you need to do it as 5 counties. So we'll see how that develops. But.
What do we haul to Fargo? Don't we haul some to Fargo too? or-
Well, we don't, so right now, Corey is working on a new deal that would allow, so all of Clay County's waste has to either go to our landfill or to Perham. That's in our waste collection system policy. So technically, no haulers or nobody who picks up any waste in Clay County can bring it to Fargo. We are working on, and of course, there's been a lot of deadhead issues regarding transportation, where you're full one way and empty the other, and that doesn't work very well. So there's a, and I really am thankful for Corey and his work on this, because he's working with Becker County, Prairie Lakes, and Fargo with the potential for how we would swap garbage. So right now, Becker County takes a lot of garbage to Fargo. That's part of that's where they go. They don't have the landfill, so they have to take theirs. There's other counties that take theirs to Gwinner. And our policy, we don't allow other counties to go into our landfill, and that's because of the life expectancy and the need to keep it for ourselves. So there's work going on right now that would, rather than Becker County haul all the way to Fargo and then come back empty, and then Moorhead haul all the way to Perham and come back empty, that we could trade tons. And so Clay County's tons, instead of hauling to Perham, would be hauled to Fargo. Because now you're talking about going from, it's a matter of blocks instead of 60 miles. But the total tons that would be accepted in each facility would remain consistent and the same. But we would save an incredible amount of money in transportation. And then Becker County, there's also another deal where there could be another source for some recyclables, could go through the Becker County. Corey's working on that, and it's a work in progress, but it's something that we've been trying to find a solution for a few years on this deadheading transportation issue. Then Thursday morning, we had the Solid Waste Advisory Committee meeting. We had a spirited conversation on glass collection. And we had Mary Aldrich from Minn Kota was there, and we had Wayne Jurdy, if I pronounce his name correctly, from MPCA. And there was kind of a spirited discussion on proper glass collection and what our options are. We do have, Mr. Jurdy did say that there is a place who's willing to come to Clay County and pick up glass and bring back to the metropolitan area free of charge. So but we still, that doesn't solve the problem of how do we get it to one spot for them to pick up. That's because they're not going to drive around all over. They're going to want a central location where they can get it. So we got a little update on I think from Soil and Water with that half acre of the seeding that they're going to do. They're looking at May and June time period to do that, and that'll be done. Thursday the 27th, we had the West Central Regional Juvenile Center meeting. We went over the 2022, pretty much the final numbers, and then the 2023 year-to-date numbers. There was a couple of significant things that James had requested, and the first one was scanning equipment. They're looking at the potential need for some scanning equipment, and the group decided to recommend reserving $225,000 for this scanning equipment. That would come out of the revenues over expenditures. last year, I think the number that we had was like $1 million in revenues over expenditures. Then in addition to that, there's the need to redo the gym floor, and there was I think he had some, well, he provided us, James provided us a quote that was already a few years old. It was from 2018, I think, or something like that, and at that time it was $18,000, and so what the group did is they made a motion to support setting aside $40,000 or approving $40,000 to replace this gym floor out of the secure portion of the funding. And of course, a project like that also the non-secure benefits from that. So what was the percent? 20%, I think is, no, yeah, about 33% is non-secure. So really that meant that, you know, from the secure portion, the county said we'll pay up to 40. So that means that with county's portion, if we were to be a third of that, that could allow up to $60,000 to be spent on a new gym floor. So James is going to go to work on getting some new estimates. And then that will obviously still come back here. And then, let's see. The out-of-state travel issue was also brought up that we did here. And then Commissioner Ebinger might add to that report. On the 27th, we had the Clay County Joint Powers Authority meeting, and we did approve some appraisal waivers and some other, we went into executive session to discuss some issues regarding two properties. And out of session, we did, we made an offer, isn't that correct, Commissioner Mojo, that we, to move forward with
We approved the, what was presented to allow staff to continue
yeah, negotiating or
finalizing the agreement that will come to the board in May.
yes, that's right. Okay, thank you. And then that same day, we had the Diversion Board of Authority meeting, and that was pretty much just updates from the executive director and construction project updates and the Army Corps of Engineers updates. And we get another drone footage that anybody can go on to the Diversion website and see that drone footage. It's pretty impressive. It's pretty impressive what's going on there. Then on yesterday, we did have a ARPA committee meeting, and the majority of the discussion was regarding opioid. And I think there was some serious conversation going on there. There's a lot of areas that need to be looked at. And so we did have some conversations about what we could do, and then how maybe we could look at the opioid dollars that Moorhead received, and how we could partner to work together on some areas of collaboration in terms of planning and guidance on what is needed and where. So I think there's more to come on that. I will say that part of that, there was discussion about hiring somebody, and our ARPA committee is probably looking at upwards to a half a position right now, and the idea, obviously, we're looking for, could Moorhead help to support making that something more significant? We'll see. We're going to have those conversations, or we've inviting Moorhead to discuss that. And then if that does transpire, Kathy has agreed that those funds could come out of that $250,000 in ARPA funds that was still reserved for public health. So there's more to come on that. And then we did talk a little bit more about the local assistance and tribal consistency fund. That's where we reserve those dollars for that potential cost for the regional water. I think Steve is going to maybe touch a little bit more on that here, on what our next steps should be, going to what you said, Commissioner Gross, and Paul, I think both of you said, should we be expanding that? I think, maybe Steve will have an update on how we could do that or what options we have. And that concludes my report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. On the 26th, I attended the Moorhead, or the Metro Flood Diversion Authority Finance Committee meeting remotely. Pretty much business as usual. The budget's on track. Sales tax figures were in for January, and they're on track as it goes, which means they're a little higher than the original plan anticipated. Had a MOU with the Buffalo Red Watershed District, just reference a $60 million project where they are adding some meanders in the river. It's part of a little bit above, or the diversion share would be a little above $8 million. That's just part of the DNR permit process that they're working on the grant on this project. And we accepted a bid from industrial builders for demolition of some properties that are on diversion property. Sure.
Can I ask a question to either of you on that one? So frequently I receive questions from citizens about the potential for purchasing buildings that have been bought out or farm buildings. Do they refer those questions to industrial builders now that they've been awarded that contract?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mojo, that would be their process.
Thank you.
Yeah, I am aware there is that process in place. I'm not sure, I was not sure that whether it went to the diversion or the contractor.
Oftentimes, Dean Vetter from A2S is kind of that conduit.
I know you've been in the past, I just didn't know with.
Your question kind of threw me off when you said just industrial builders.
Well, didn't you just mention awarding the bill to?
Yeah.
The demolition of the properties? I think in the past, the contractor that it's awarded that
Right.
has the option to sell the buildings.
That's correct.
For demoing the
And
properties. So
I
if
think
they're-
that's the same in all instances of once an acquisition is made, that whoever is awarded that contract has the rights to that property.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
And last thing we did on the Finance Committee was just issued or received a letter from Hyde Bailey. They'll be conducting the 2023 audit. On following day on 27th, I attend the West Central Juvenile Center board meeting, and Commissioner Campbell did a good job of covering that. I think he hit all the high points I've got. And later that day, I attended the Diversion Authority meeting. Again, it was sort of business as usual. We had a lot of updates, and that was all covered by Commissioner Campbell. Last Friday, it was, I think this is worth reporting. I attended the retirement, both in the afternoon, the coffee, and then the later in the evening, the festivities that were held at Murphy's for Lieutenant Brad Pennis of the Moorhead Police Department. He's the second longest serving Moorhead police officer in the history of the department, which scares me because he's still a young guy. but he did 33 years of service to the people in Moorhead and basically to the region. He was over our regional drug task force when I was chief. Remarkable guy, worked hard, one of the most meticulous supervisors I've ever seen, and he's going to be missed. But he has earned his retirement, and I was glad to be able to attend. It was as good a send-off as I've seen. It really was. There were a lot of good stories on Brad, and we enjoyed hearing them. And good luck to him in his retirement, and that completes my report.
Oh,
Thank you. Going back to last Tuesday, along with Commissioner Campbell, I was part of that insurance committee. He explained everything in detail there, so nothing to add. The next day, I also was part of I did go down to the chambers for the diversion finance. Commissioner Eminger spoke on that. I'll just add that Clay County Treasurer Lori Johnson was our voting member for that meeting. Thursday was the annual meeting for CAP LP. It was an event held at the Tech Music Venue. I don't know how many people, Jenny, 200? It was a bunch.
Yeah.
150.
Right.
Whatever it was. And anyway, dinner, we had a compressed board meeting. Mainly it was just the reports, and then also approved a couple of grant applications. And then with that, as part of it, the program was recognizing people for their years of service, whether it was 5, 10, 15. There was 120 and 225 year. And so a lot of cohesiveness over there and long-term commitments by many people that work at CAP LP. Also part of that was 2 awards that went out to, one was for the Volunteer Extraordinaire Award that's put up by CAP LP for people doing good work for CAP LP, and it was given to Fix It Forward Ministry. Those people put out 400 cars. It's amazing. And out of that, 22 of those cars went into service through CAP LP. So incredible work that they do. And then the other one was our, what did they do with it?
Dennis Height Campbell.
Yeah. Anyway, we had it right here. You want to finish on that? Oh, I got it here. There we go. Anyway, it would have been our Dennis Heidkamp Leadership Award, and that was given to Nicole Flick, who owns or operates ABC 123 Child Enrichment Center. And that goes out annually to the person that demonstrates true leadership in their community. So that's part of CAP LP. The next day was a very interesting day for me. I had it was a training and conversation that the Clay County Collaborative put out, and we had a 3-hour training at the Family Service Center. The focus was around community resilience conversation. There were interactive group discussions, and again, much about what we talked about, what you heard through the 2 LACs earlier today. And as these groups were coming together, and we had schools and other privates that are involved in all types of our care. But again, maybe it's a little repetitive here, what the LSCs, but really coming down to, what are the needs, the discussion, and then the solutions, ongoing and new. And as they had mentioned earlier today with the LACs, so much is what are the strains of, well, I'll say it, with the state being a big metropolitan area, but considered a small rural town. So how do we elevate that and, get more funding to this area for the needs that we have. And then certainly the other thing that was well mentioned was just transportation. You know, how do we get people to where they need to be to get the services? Then yesterday, Monday the 1st, I had my Morehead Planning Commission. Two items really of note. The first one, just awareness. We had, it was more a simple order, and it was vacation of a property, but it's more to, I want you to know, that was on 3350 3rd Avenue North, and Silver Linings is bringing forward their next plans for, you know, permanent supportive housing. So that project is starting to go together. I don't know the details of that, other than that it's starting because they're getting room to do the plan that they want. The second part was up just north of Sunset, there is Sunset Lanes, excuse me, 8th Avenue addition that goes across, and they made preliminary final plats and getting set for a little development to start somewhere along that border, on the north side, actually. There's a retention pond on the south side, and there'll be potentially a new development going in along 8th Avenue. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last week, I also attended the pollinator habitat night that was put on at Junkyard with the partnerships of the Soil and Water Conservation District, Pheasants Forever, Regional Extension Master Gardeners Crew. Kids were able to plant, or people were able to plant pollinators, have updates on appropriate ground cover. The Conservation District also provides trees that are planted in rural and urban areas, so we talked about that. Also, an item of note from them, they were able to hire the open position that they had been advertising for since Craig Halverson's retirement, and then Gabe Foltz went into his position. So the individual will be a great addition to that organization. Excited to work with her in the future. On Wednesday, Commissioner Krabenoft and I attended, or not attended, but visited a property in rural Holly on Lake 11. The citizen was concerned with their assessed value. We did have the opportunity to view the property and discuss his ability to further work with the county to address what that assessed value is, ultimately at the meeting in June that we all attend. I also attended the MCC JPA meeting that Commissioner Campbell updated on. I don't have anything else to add. I am hopeful, though, that we can continue the work with Holy Cross Township. I know there's some decisions that need to be made in regards to crossings and roads, so hopeful a resolution can happen, as I think the date proposed earlier was needed to happen by May 11th.
Commissioner Mojo, that is the deadline that the Army Corps gave in terms of if we want to have that crossing, there needs to be an answer by the 11th.
Thank you. Thursday evening, I attended with Commissioner Krabenoft and staff from CAPLP the annual meeting that was held at TAC. It was a very nice event. They have millions and millions of dollars in grants, as heard a little bit from Rhonda in regards to what they're doing. There will at some point need to be an addition of staff on their part to handle all those grants, but really have done a fantastic job of meeting the needs exponentially in the community. So it was a nice evening, and also congratulations to the organization and Nicole Flick for their awards that they had been nominated for. Yesterday, I attended with Commissioner Gross, and he can elaborate further on the MRC meeting. There is a lot to understand with the legislative session wrapping up quickly. They've been given a deadline from the governor of May 12th. We'll see if that can be achieved. I highly doubt, though, that given the past performance of that they'll come to an agreement before the end of session, which was an additional 10 days after that. I think the tax hearing is being debated currently. There are so many different wrap-ups being heard with their hearings. They did advise us, though, if you need to make contact with our legislative representatives, email and letters are not the way at this point. It's with personal reach outs. For instance, the environment hearing that happened yesterday, they had over 200 pages of letters in such a swirl of wrap up. It's really hard to think that legislators can read all of those. So all of our legislative representatives last week on another issue were very responsive to us just by reaching out through personal reach out. So do that. And then also attended the ARPA committee meeting yesterday, as Commissioner Campbell alluded to. Hopeful that we can help. This board has just taken such a huge step in addressing substance crisis in our community. Hopeful that with the proposal that we will bring forward to this board and ultimately with the city of Moorhead, hopeful we can hire a full-time individual to meet that need. Last week, I worked a lot on, this isn't a committee, but worked a lot on our, what are we calling it now? Withdrawal Management Center, our detox facility. We are waiting permitting review that needs to come from the Office of Labor and Industry. That was substantially held up. There was a bottleneck in the system. It was looking like we weren't going to get that permit until late July, which, as you know, would really change the outlook of how long and the cost of that process to build that facility. Did reach out to Senator Kupek and Senator Johnson, Representative Joy, Keel, and Keeler. Representatives Keeler and Joy were very responsive to that, and I think worked through a multitude of emails back and forth. Klein McCarthy staff were able to identify where maybe the holdup is, and the week before last, we were only able to move up 4 in the queue over a week, and last Wednesday alone, we're able to move up 5. We're still substantially, I think, in the 20s. Representative Keeler did advise us to check in weekly, so I think today would probably be appropriate to double down on reaching out to see where we are. Ultimately, the Department of Human Services was not aware that review took that long, so we're not the only ones that are waiting on that, so hopefully we'll be able to move up sooner rather than later. But as we saw with winterization costs with our transfer station, that can sometimes cost us over $100,000 monthly. And I'm just hopeful we can get it permitted before having to have some sort of mitigation like that. And I'm sure you did see, was able to have conversations with you. I have thrown my name in as running for the Association of Minnesota Counties, a second vice president position. That is not a position that would cost Clay County any additional money for serving in those capacities if that were to come. But hopeful that by doing so, it will only elevate the needs that we're seeing on this side of the state to our state leadership. So, thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I do a follow-up to when I talked about the core with that deadline of May 11th? It might sound heavy-handed, without giving their explanation as to why. And I think it's important that be stated. And so that design, as I had said in my report a week ago, was that they were 65% complete with design. And they, if they're going to make those changes, they need to know that now for design. And also part of the reason why is that they have a scheduled bid letting date for that project, and they don't want that bid letting date changed because that project, the fill that they take from that project also is used in another part of their project that also has a bid letting date. And so if one of these is held up, it holds up everything. And just like Commissioner Mojo just said, we all know what happens when construction is delayed. We have price escalations that we don't need to deal with. So that was a little bit more explanation for that May 11th deadline.
Just a question, is either Commissioner Campbell or Steve, have we heard back from the diversion? Has there been a response? I know a letter went out.
Yeah, the letter went out by Executive Director Paulson, and I did talk with Mr. Paulson at the end of our meeting on Thursday, and he had not had a response yet. Of course, the letter had just gone out the Tuesday before.
Yeah.
So, and I have heard nothing in regards to response at this point.
Okay, my meetings were last Thursday at Tenant Shack. And for those of us that don't know what that is, that's State Community Health Services Advisory Committee. So there we came up with pretty much the three plans or whatever the purposes to go for. And that was trying to come up a plan to retain our nurses. It seemed like every district in Shack had the same problem, retaining nurses. And how to spend the ARPA funds that are available, other services for serving the needs of the new Americans that are coming up with different ways to serve them, and just the regular retaining of staff. Yesterday I attended the MRC meeting, which Jenny's reported on. Other than that, just got to add that Paul Market was our representative, our Commissioner of Revenue, talked to us about different things going on now. And I have to agree with Jenny that, boy, that ending day of May 12th, I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but seems to be a lot of things to do in the next 2 weeks. So last night I went to the City of Felton's City Council meeting, and good discussion was held there. They got a recycling building they're trying to get built there. I think we've been working on that project for about 3 years now. But they are gonna, as soon as it warms up a little bit, they're gonna do the cement floor and get that going finally. So they're also very concerned about recycling. There's a citizen there that wanted to see if they could help out, come up with a committee or whatever to help people recycle. They feel some people that should be doing some cleanup, not recycling, but cleanup week. If they need additional help, they'd like to get some volunteers from the community to clean up. And other than that, it's just was out checking some rural roads to see how we're doing on that. My report. Thank you. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last week, I also participated in the insurance committee that has been addressed. Again, just to touch base, I think there'll be an agenda item coming next week from action out of that meeting in regards to our ancillary benefits. Met on that day also with Judge Rosenfeld, Renell Fennell from Court Administration, Brian Melton from our County Attorney's Office, Janelle Cheney and Joe on some space needs here within the courthouse, specifically focused around probation. And so we're looking at some possibilities there. 26th, I had Clay County Management. We talked about the retreat recap. We further discussed Jackie's role as communication coordinator and trying to make sure we're best collaborating information out between all of our departments. Talked about 2024 budget. We're also talked about employee appreciation picnic. The department heads have put a picnic on for the last couple summers to show their appreciation to their employees. We're looking for potential dates of doing that again. On 26, also talked with Mr. Melton on a series of county issues. Also Lori and Joe on space issues that the auditors are having, specifically in regards to some of their voting equipment. On the 26th and 27th, worked with Commissioner Mojo, Ryan Weber on the plan reviews that have been addressed. On the 27th, we had MCC JPA meeting that's been covered. Participated on last Friday in MACA legislative updates. We talked about the county program aid. Currently, the Senate tax bill has us at about 15%, a 15% increase across the state. That's about a $40 million price tag. Originally, we've talked earlier in the legislative session, it was around 100. And so we're seeing a little bit of a decrease there, a significant decrease. Talked about family paid leave, corrections, probation funding, and also the legalization of cannabis in both the House and the Senate, what those impacts would look like. On the 28th, we went with Rhonda Porter and Katie Stock in regards to a contract with one of our vendors. On 28th, I met with Commissioner Krabenhoff on a series of different issues. Yesterday, I met with also Sheriff Empting on a series of issues, and we also participated in the ARPA meeting. And yesterday afternoon, I did participate in the substance use or withdrawal management first contractors meeting. They kind of set the guidelines at Gertz Construction. They're going to be meeting every Tuesday through the project at Tuesday afternoon, and so we are looking to start our owners meetings through the county perspective on June 12th. We'll be targeting that afternoon time again, but there should be a invite coming out to Commissioner Campbell, Commissioner Mojo. Just a reminder, the DNR did put a burning ban out that I guess covers nearly all of Minnesota. Specifically, it is to Clay County, and so there are no burning permits that are going to be provided until further notice. Again, just to comment on follow-up from Commissioner Mojo and Commissioner Krabenhoff's going out to the site with citizens. We do have the local boards of appeals and equalization and open book meetings have started. They started on April 20th. There are open books that are remaining, so citizens that have concerns with their property evaluations or classifications need to start there. And so in the event that they want to come before this board in June to express concern with either, they need to make sure that they start there. The last thing that I have is just a follow-up from our agenda item last week. During our discussion with the West Central Regional Water District, there were some questions from the commission in regards to do we have the right footprint. After that meeting, I was reached out to by Rocky Schneider from AE2S, who's been doing the work with both Polk County and Norman County. And asked about, based on some of the conversation or comments that were made during this commission meeting, if there was any appetite from this board to look at exploring a larger footprint right out of the gate. They'd indicated that they would be willing to look at some additional townships. I mean, looking for guidance from you, but to probably the east-west of where we're at, look at two different communities, Glendon and Hawley, to get their insight or thoughts, and also to have 2 additional public township meetings to discuss a potential interest. Again, that would come with a cost to that. I don't want to. They don't have a solid number on that, but they utilize the number right around $10,000 to have that outreach. They kind of called it a preliminary survey of needs is what that would be. And so I guess have a conversation here today if there's any interest to have them come back to look at that footprint, or if we're satisfied moving forward with where we're at. So that I'd yield for any thoughts.
I wonder if that watershed, as far as widening that area, whatever, once we get that committee going, whether that could be brought up down at that time, you know. I know at Felton last night at the meeting, they discussed that too, whether there could be an additional area incorporated, so.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
You know, we did talk about, I think if Clay County wants to take the position that we should expand that area within Clay County, I think that we should be moving forward with that right away. I say that because once it moves to the point where it currently is at, for example, I think what we said right now is Clay County's representation would be 15%, which is one voting member out of 7. And if you wait and do it, you know, Clay County could request to have the area expanded, but then it's up to that board to accept you or not. right? The longer you wait, it's got to be accepted. So in the formation of it, I think is the time when we should be,
I was concerned about, if we go too big, say we include all of Clay County. What's the percentage of our involvement then? I mean, we're 15% right now.
well, we'd be 80%.
Yeah, I mean, we'd probably be 80%, yes, you're right.
But I obviously, you would exclude, the boundaries of Moorhead. Moorhead has their own system, so.
Moorhead and Dilworth too.
Yeah, so, but I think it was both of you who expressed some concern. Are we satisfied with the boundary we have in Clay County?
I don't think we are. I think it's gonna need to be expanded, because I already got some calls from different cities.
Then I think the time to do it, I think we should have a to us back, because I would rather see us have that incorporated before the final establishment is done than afterwards.
Okay, yes, Paul.
Well, I wouldn't mind further conversation. I don't know if I'm, how do I say this? I seen the need for it potentially going down the south, no question about that. The idea of paying 10 grand for additional study, I want to make sure we have good information before we commit to something like that. I also come from the view, we know that the water sources that they have right now are not going to be big enough anywhere to be coming this far south. We also know, it's already been mentioned, we're going to have the heaviest population. So I would like to ask the question, before we commit to expanding, maybe these projects take a long time. Maybe we should be looking at a new water district that maybe takes care of Clay County and other regions down on the south end, if that's where potentially other water sources may come into play. I'm just throwing that out, because I feel like all these things are really long-term. I mean, it's going to take years to get down here. And so I just throw that out, but maybe that's a lot of work we don't want to go through. But I guess that's where I'd like to talk about that conversation a little bit before we spend 10 grand.
Well, and again, I think what the proposal is on spending the money, it's to go to the townships, and it's going to some of those rural communities, your Hollies in those areas, to ask them.
Right.
We don't know if they're interested. And that might give us a clear indication of that we have the right boundary. But you're not going to get those answers without doing some work. You're just not going to get the answers without doing some work. So who's going to do the work?
And Mr. Chair, Commissioners, just to clarify, the offer that was made at around $10,000 was to look at about 8 additional townships. It wasn't looking to encompass the entire county at that price. So they would be looking for feedback from you to where you'd like to potentially see that footprint.
So when you say those townships, it may not even come down to Highway 10.
I think Highway 10, based on the footprint that we're at now, I would say that's probably the cutoff. There wouldn't be much south.
It'd be close, but it'd still be up about, I don't know.
Yeah.
7, 8 miles.
So I don't know if we're going to find out from Holly or Glendon. I don't know. Maybe it'd be worth it for those municipalities. Maybe it's just worth a phone call to the mayors.
Well, I certainly support us having further conversation about bringing it all the way down to Highway 10. I think that based on prior conversations with other townships that I've had, that seems to be the line of interest. I think once you get further down in there, then you start encompassing the bigger cities, and some of them have their own ideas on the Buffalo Aquifer, not wanting, I think becomes a logistical issue to pull water where are you pulling water from and who are you interrupting service from? And the farther south you go, you know, once you get along that Highway 10 corridor, are you pulling water west of Moorhead and then running it around the city? I mean, that's tricky. So logistically, seems to make sense to encompass all of those townships down to 10, so that would, you know, the Oakport, Mullen, Spring Prairie, Cromwell, Highland Grove. I mean, is that your boundary?
I guess it'd be good to talk to AES too, to see whether they could even supply it that far.
I don't think it would hurt to just have them come here and just, you know, give a, you know, how could they help us, you know, determine what our boundary should be?
All right. I will reach out to them and have them come here either next week or the following week.
Okay, thank you.
And that concludes my report.
Very good. Anybody else got something to add? Jackie, always shake your head. Gotta have something. Okay, we're adjourned.